Hey, y'all, I wanted to share with you the sweetest and most rewarding email I got from a client. And I especially want to remind those of you out there looking for a new job that there are jobs out there. And yes, it's hard and challenging, and how we find a job is different than how we used to find a job. But there are jobs out there. You will find one. People are getting hired. It will work out. Here's what her email said. She said, "Hey, Lindsay, I wanted to send a big thank you and let you know I got a job. I start next week at a company. I'm so happy I was able to get a 10K raise, unlimited PTO, hybrid, paid benefits, and at a location which is a really fun part of town. You were the perfect person to help me dig through all the work shifts and heal from getting fired." You guys, managing your brain and learning how to feel okay while things are hard is crucial. It is what is going to help you get through and create a career that you love. As you may know, I worked at Amazon for almost 12 years, where the average employee lasts a little under 2 years. If you are a woman in tech listening to this, I am sure you can relate to the struggle that comes from being the only woman in the room. If you are a man in tech listening to this, I want to help you become aware of what it is like to be the only woman in the room. Now, as a white woman, that is what I can speak to. There are many other scenarios where people are the only in the room. These principles can apply to those same scenarios, but I want to speak to my experience personally. And I'm going to teach you a few core concepts that hopefully you'll be able to apply to your situation to figure out your style of applying this. But as you know, if you've walked into a meeting and realized you're the only woman in the room, it can bring up all sorts of different emotions. Maybe you're going to start overthinking every word. Maybe you're going to feel like you have to prove that you belong. And this is potentially something you struggle with over and over. Whether you're in tech or corporate or leadership, you are not alone in this experience. And I want to help you see you don't need to keep shrinking or getting louder. We want to become more of you. But there really is a heavy emotional weight to being the only one in the room. One of the meetings that stands out the most to me, I actually wasn't the only woman in the room. There was one other woman, but there was probably about 10 other men that were much more senior and driving the main conversation. So the other woman in the room happened to be an HR rep. I truthfully don't know how I got into this meeting, but I did. I was much more junior than the other executive men on this call. But the HR representative was presenting some data around how the company was supporting, promoting, hiring, managing out, looking at all of the different employee phases for groups of employees that had self-identified into different categories that the company was looking at from a diversity and inclusion standpoint. And as this person was presenting the data, they were simply presenting it as it's just raw information. I noticed the men in the room, a lot of them are multitasking. No one seemed really fazed by the data, but the more and more that was shared, the more and more emotional reaction I was having to physically, I felt ill and sick, because this data was showing us there were blatant, known, provable with data biases happening across the company, across multiple groups. None of the men in the room fit into any of those categories and were not impacted by the biases that were happening across the company. I was nervous. I was angry. I felt terrible. I felt sick. I was sweating. My chest was all splotchy, but I had to speak up and say something. So the meeting continued on for about a half an hour. A few people threw out a few questions and a few ideas here and there, but no one was really invested or worried about this data, even though the purpose of the meeting was to look at the data. I eventually spoke up and asked if anyone else in the room was having a physical reaction, or was it just me, as one of the few people in the room that this data was directly talking about. No one said anything. No one had a response. I had a few other emotionally charged comments that probably were not me at my best, but also things that needed to be said. Now, unfortunately, not a lot changed after that meeting. People felt uncomfortable, and then moved on to their merry way and continued on in the same practices that they have today. But in that moment, it was extremely challenging to feel like the only person in the room that was being impacted by that, and yet no one cared and no one was going to stand up and help me overcome some of the known biases. So first and foremost, if you find yourself in a situation where you are the only in the room, start by just giving yourself credit for being there. Just being there is a step towards progress and change and resilience. So give yourself a little credit just for being there and acknowledge for yourself, this is challenging. This is hard. We as humans are wired to feel a part of the group. When you're the only, it's harder for your brain to see how you can connect. Even though you do have 90% more in common with them than what you have different, your brain and your biology by default wants you to be a part of the group, so it will point out to you why you don't belong. As I've worked on this with myself and many clients, I see a few thought patterns that are not helpful, that are traps that our brains easily tell us because we're wired to be a part of the group. And I want to help give you an alternative way to think about them. So the first one is when you find yourself in this situation, a very natural inclination, a natural thing to think is, I need to prove that I belong here. I have a technology degree. I know how to code. I can't tell you how many meetings I've sat in as the only woman, and they all assume I don't know how to read or write code. Sometimes I would use that to my advantage and had a lot of fun with it along the way. But if I walked into those meetings feeling like I had to prove I belong, I usually became someone who's not really me, who I don't want to be, who I wasn't always proud of. So if you're having this thought of, I have to prove I belong, here's a couple things I'd ask you to think about. How do you actually know that you've proved it? And are they looking for proof that you belong? They're going to have their judgments, their thoughts about you, but you only need to prove it to yourself. And you've already done that simply by being willing to show up. Okay? Think, who do you want to be in that moment and focus on the work. I have to prove I belong. It's a thought. It is not a fact. And it comes from fear. So if that thought, I need to prove I belong, doesn't make you feel calm and open and safe to be yourself, how you communicate, your body language, your tone, your questions, your ability to think strategically is all going to come from that fear and worry. So my recommendation is that's not a helpful thought. While you'll find other people out there and examples to prove that thought right, it's just not helping you. If thinking I need to prove I belong feels hard and scary, let's find a more helpful thought. Here's another common thought error I see in these scenarios. It's, if I mess up, I'm never going to get opportunities for growth, for promotion, and I'm never going to get respect. Again, this is a thought, not a fact. You can prove it true or false, no matter what you want. But if this thought doesn't feel supportive and helpful, why are we telling ourselves this? If that's the thought and the feeling you're in this meeting with, you're going to be hyper aware of what you're saying and how you're saying it. And you're going to be weird and not yourself and not very genuine. And they're going to pick up on that and it's not going to go well. I like to just remind myself, if I'm worried about messing up and losing credibility with these people who already don't respect me, I just remind myself, I respect me. I'm here, I'm showing up, I'm being the only, I'm doing a hard thing. And I respect myself, especially when I mess up. Why? Because I don't go around blaming other people. I don't spiral in shame and tell myself why I'm horrible. I know how to keep showing up and try again. I know that trust and growth and respect happen in the mistakes. When the mistake is made and you show up in the right way, that's where the growth comes. So I'm very comfortable with a mistake. I know it's simply a chance to build that trust and respect. I'm hoping to feel and believe is there. Here's another common thought a lot of my female clients come to me with and worried about, and that I've seen firsthand. It's if I speak up, I'm going to come off as too much. I was managing an employee that oftentimes she was the only woman in the room in her particular setting. And HR came back to me with some feedback that some of the other people in a meeting had complained that this person was being too aggressive. And the feedback was pretty harsh. And I don't remember all of the details, but I remember there was a line in there specifically saying the tone and communication was extremely aggressive. And I respectfully replied back to this HR representative and asked if he would be willing to share any other feedback he's received from these people or men in the larger organization that he's aware of when men in the group have been too aggressive. Because I would love to make sure that we're evaluating this on equal terms. Needless to say, he did not have any examples. Now, I'm not saying we can't all improve our communication styles, but you need to speak up. Be you and like who you are. This isn't about trying to get their approval or them seeing and liking you. I just remind myself I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. Stop trying to prove you deserve to be there and start owning that you are there. So here's a few tools of how you can actually do that. How do you actually own that you are there and be the kind of person you want to be? First, whenever you're having any kind of emotional reaction, breathe. Just breathe, just breathe, just breathe. Do some purposeful breathing. If you know you're going into this scenario, do some breathing beforehand. Do some box breathing. Do the physiological sigh. There's so many different techniques, but stress cannot live in a relaxed body. Purposely take breath in through your nose, smell the flowers, and hold it and feel it in your body and blow it out through your mouth. Blow out the candles and feel that energy release and relax through you. And do this over and over, potentially even during the meeting. This is going to help your emotional state stay calm. When emotion is high, intelligence is low. If we're in the meeting and the only woman, we're not going to feel 100% psychologically safe, but we want to be in control of our emotions, which doesn't mean we're trying to make ourselves feel good. We're just not showing up at the expense of the anxiety and discomfort and lack of respect that we're feeling. We're showing up and owning the meeting while we feel those things. Okay. So a key tool to being able to do that is learning how do you breathe while those emotions are coming up for you. So how do you own the space? One, make sure you're focusing on your breathing before, during, after. Second, decide who you want to be in that room. There's no right or wrong answer. Some days you may just want to be quiet. Some days you want to be more outgoing. Some days you want to be in the middle somewhere. There's no right or wrong way, but decide who do you want to be and be her. Okay? No matter what anyone else thinks or feels about it, they're allowed their own opinions. We're optimizing to us, to owning that we are in this room. Third, use silence strategically. A long pause can help you reclaim your power and is a very powerful tool to help calm things, to help draw attention to the right thing, and help you feel in control of what you are trying to communicate. Fourth, you could ask questions back in return to help drive awareness of the bias that may be present in the conversation. Now, we don't want to do this in a flippant, angry, resentful, frustrated way, because remember, we've decided we don't want to be that. We want to be the calm, confident woman, but you can ask questions back in return. So here's an example of one of my favorite questions to ask at the beginning of a meeting when I'm the only one there. If we're at the beginning of the meeting and maybe it hasn't started or there's some friendly chit chat going back and forth, I like to ask one of the men, hey, how do you really manage working all of these crazy hours and being a dad? So many times as a woman, I got asked questions like that. How do I do it all and be a mom? Yet we don't ask that of the men. I'm not trying to be flippant. I'm not trying to shove it back in their face. I'm genuinely curious. What have they figured out? What I found is that question is so uncommon and catches many of the men in the room off guard that it helps draw awareness for them when they ask a woman a question like that. Okay, so ask questions back in return to help drive awareness. Again, we're not doing this to throw it in their face and be mad and angry. But if you're noticing questions that are biased, don't be afraid to reverse it and ask it back in return after you've breathed and come at it from a calm place. And lastly, for the love, do not volunteer to do the administrative tasks in the meeting. Don't offer to be the one to take notes. Don't offer to be the one to schedule the follow-up meeting. Don't offer to own something that's outside of the scope of anyone in this room. Be a team player and do your part. But all of the data, all of my personal examples have shown time and time again, women historically have done the secretarial administrative tasks in the office, and that still continues on to this day. Just don't. I like to ask at the end of a meeting when I'm the only woman in the room, who has a good list of action items to make sure we're all aligned on next steps? I assume they took notes. Let's share. Let's all participate. So that leads me to tools you can use to communicate clearly and with intention. Quick interruption. If you're listening to this thinking, I'll figure this out later, that's exactly why you're still stuck. You've been telling yourself after this project or once things calm down for how long now? 6 months? A year? 2? Every week you wait is another week watching less qualified people get promoted and move on while you stay exhausted and undervalued. The brutal truth? Nothing changes if nothing changes, and no one is coming to save you. It's your job to make the change. My coaching program gives you the exact tools to break this cycle in weeks, not years. You can even try it out for free. The link is in the description below. Because if you don't take action now, when will you? Next year when you're even more burned out, or when you're in a bad spot and have to find a new job? I hope not. You deserve better. Now back to the podcast. So remember, we've decided who we want to be in the meeting. We're breathing. We're trying to show up as the kind of person we want to be. We aren't trying to prove our worth or value to anyone. We are here. We are allowing ourselves to feel everything that comes up, and we are going to own the space. So to be clear and intentional in your communication, here's a couple things to think through. One, you want to make confident statements. Even if you're not 100% sure, don't lie, don't BS it, but do not start out a statement with a caveat. Never. I might be wrong, but I think this is right, but never start out with a caveat. It's like when you go someplace and someone's giving a talk or a presentation and they tell you they didn't really have time to prepare. You're already going to tune them out. If they don't believe in themselves, why are you going to believe in them and listen to what they have to say? Make the statement, and then you can always ask for feedback. We follow this process to reduce risk of scope creep. What's worked for you, right? That's a statement. Don't say, now, I know this may not work for everyone, but we follow this process to reduce scope creep. Make confident statements, okay? We're trying to be clear and intentional in our communication. Another way to do this is I like to think of it in terms of be on the same team as them and stand up for yourself. Defense is the first act of war, as our friend Brene Brown says. So we're not trying to be defensive and prove to them why we're right and they're wrong, or we're good enough, or we should be respected. No, we're at war there. We want to be on the same team and we want to stand up for ourselves. So if you're in a scenario where you just gave an idea and someone else in the room is basically repeating what you just said, here's how I would use this mental model to be on the same team and stand up for myself. So I'd wait till the person was done and I'd say, that's a good point. You did a great job of summarizing what I was saying. Sounds like we're aligned on my idea. I'm on their team. I'm agreeing with them. I'm saying yes. And I'm pointing out that was an idea I already stated. We're on the same page. Great. And the third tool is to use partnering language. Remember, we don't want to be at war. We're on the same team. Partnering language is a very powerful tool to do this. Now, I always try to give a caution when I talk about this because you can do this in extremely manipulative way. People that do unhealthy psychological things to other humans use this as one of their best tools. We're not them, right? We're choosing with intention who we want to be, but use partnering language of we, us, not I and me. What that's doing is it's signaling to their subconscious, we're on the same team. This is not defensive. We're not at war. We don't need to go and defend ourselves. We're on the same team. An example of this, instead of saying, that's what I was talking about earlier, it ties directly into this, you might say, we were talking about this earlier. It ties directly into this. Simply changing that I to we triggers to their nervous system, we're on the same team. It's partnering language. They're a part of it. They have some ownership in it. Instead of saying, there's a few milestones I don't think we're aligned on, we could say, there's a few milestones we haven't aligned on yet. Looks like we all agree on the goal, but we're not aligned on how to get there yet. What would help us all get there during this call? Partnering language is so powerful. These things take practice. We're not going for perfect. It's okay, but these are some really helpful tools to communicate clearly and with intention. Because here's the thing, you don't need to be louder. You just need to be more clear and intentional with who you want to be. A rising tide lifts all the boats. Every time you own and take up space, you create space for others. So please take up the space, own it, communicate with intention, and keep showing up while you figure out how to do this in your own style in a way that aligns with who you are. The more you like you and the more you're being who you want to be, the easier this all becomes. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. It's okay if they're wrong about you, and it's okay if you're right. Growth and strength comes in the mistakes from showing up and continuing to like that we're the kind of person that can show up and learn and grow through mistakes. All right. You're amazing. You got this. We'll talk soon.